All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, is my right hand man, Lou. Lou, I've missed you, buddy. It's been a long time since I've been able to say "all right, all right, all right" to
I
kick us off.
I missed those beautiful blue eyes of yours. It's been quite some time. Are they blue?
They are beautiful,
Ah,
blue,
yeah,
and
they're
allow me to
ocean.
bat them
They're
for you.
yeah, they're bungalow blue eyes over there.
I refer to them as sexy blue, but I'll settle for bungalow blue. But can you believe it's actually been over a month since we last got on the mic?
I know. It's I forgot how to set up everything. It's been a shit show this afternoon and over this evening, to be honest with you. So looking forward. This is like our. I feel like this is kind of like our stretch before the workout, like before
Hell,
we start getting into light stretch, guys. Nothing too crazy, nothing too insane here. This is just for us to get back on the horse here.
let's break a sweat, knock off the rust. I think you and I would both agree that after everything we put forth in during free agency and throughout the draft, a break was needed and required. But I didn't necessarily expect it to be this long. It's just sometimes the personal life gets in front of the hobby, if you will. But we are back at it. Let's go ahead and knock off that rust. Let's spend some time covering our favorite subjects, our respective teams, of course, the 49ers and the Chargers. Love to just kind of go ahead and recap slash discuss their offseason. Let's call it wins, losses, additions, subtractions, what we liked, what we didn't like, basically what took place for the team. So, Lou, I'm gonna give you the honors like I typically do. I'd love to, if you're comfortable, begin with the Los Angeles Chargers and kind of let me get your sentiment around your offseason recap for your squad.
I just wasn't a big fan of how passive they were this off season.
You're
I
such
couldn't
an
even fucking I
asshole.
couldn't
You're
even fucking
such a you can't even fake
I
that.
can't even finish. Okay, so in all kidding aside, this is probably I was really thought about this. I feel like this is the time that I'm the most excited for any Charger team in a long, long time. Maybe back, uh, in the heyday when Rivers and LT were at their prime and what have you. But this has been one of the most fun, most exciting off season, logical off season, and complete. To be honest with you, that the Chargers have really put together in quite some time. I'm going to say greater than 10 years, and it's been refreshing. And I still feel like as a Chargers fan, that I'm still dumbfounded and can't believe some of the things they've done. They brought in ridiculous talent. Not only that, they brought in talent before in the past, but usually from a coupon standpoint, of the cheaper variety. But not only that, they've actually brought in adequate depth, which is huge because I've always made this joke or this reference or this metaphor, whatever you want to call it. Everyone talks how great this Chargers team has always been, but I always felt like they built their team like I build my Madden teams. A shitload of stars in the front end, and there's literally no one to come off the bench. So I just turned the fatigue off, I turned the injuries off, and I felt like the Chargers thought they could do the same thing, the last 6, 7 years. And I really feel like they've done a really good job building up a lot of versatility, a lot of depth, and good for them. Kudos for them. This is something that I'm not accustomed to, and I'm still a little skeptical that is this really happening.
All right, so I'm going to cut you off for 1 second, and I don't mean to derail your thoughts here, but I'm going to pick at you for a moment. You know what? I'll let you talk about these individually and what it means for the team, but let's quickly just recap some of these things, right? Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, Kyle Van Noy, and yet, and this is where
Oh,
you
let's not
annoy.
forget about Bryce Callahan too.
Yeah,
And real quick, I know you're getting to a point, but and this is what I want to talk about. Of those people that you just mentioned, of those players you just mentioned, 60% of those defensive players they've had experience in Brandon Staley's scheme before, which is huge.
yeah, and I mean, this is the changing of the guard. Go get the people that know what they're doing, right? It accelerates the learning curve. But this is where you annoy me. And I'm going to say this. And I say this slightly jealously. I have to, as a follower of yours on Twitter,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to see you constantly be like, we still need to do this. We still need to do that. And I look at what you did. And I'm like, ain't that enough? Like, can we stop here? You know? And it's like the rich get richer, the greedy get greedier. And I'm just like, tone it down a mother effing minute here, because most teams, I led with Khalil Mack. So let's say Khalil Mack or JC Jackson. Most teams will be thrilled if they brought in one of those people. One of those people. You bring in two of those people on top of countless other players with former superstar names, former people that have been in this scheme that are like legitimately immediate upgrades and immediate improvement, especially on the defensive side of the ball, versus who was there to complement the superstars that were already there. And I'm just like, bro, I've listened to you for years ridicule what they do. And just like all us fans do, is the minute they start doing the right thing, it's still not enough.
All right. So if anyone knows me well, I don't know the guy's name in this movie, but in the movie Major League, there's that obnoxious Cleveland Indians fan that
Oh my god, so
always
good. Randy
complains.
Quaid. Randy
Randy,
Quaid is the actor.
that describes me as a fan to a T. I'm always yelling at them, no matter how good they're doing. They're gonna
They'll
blow it.
blow it in the ninth.
They're gonna blow it in. They're gonna blow it in the fourth. And I'll tell you right now, Weston, been pretty damn accurate though with that. But there is something I feel like this is the first time in a long time I feel like they have a coach and a vision, and it's not just hearsay. It's not just those typical cliches. Brandon Staley has a vision on how he wants his team to look, and somehow, some way, I'm not sure if he kidnapped General Manager Tom Telesco's children and say, "Listen, I'm not giving them back until you get the players I need." But I'll tell you right now, he did a tremendous job working with General Manager Tom Telesco to really fortify this defense, because it was a mess last year. They had no one opposite Joey Bosa to apply pressure. Their their run defense was thinner and weaker than a wet paper bag. Uh, it just was an awful. And the guy understand that had to do something to Brandon Staley. That Brandon Staley is a very prideful person. For his defense to be the weak link of the team, that had to piss him off and really make him go to the drawing board to really gain some additional talent. It looks like he's trying to replicate the exact defense that he had back with the Rams. If you look what they're doing right now, and some of them, we named a couple of former Ram castoffs, and I mean that in a positive way, but he's literally trying to replicate that defense that was so popular back in 2020.
It worked, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I literally applaud what this team did. You just mentioned it. Like what was the weak link? Defense, right? Defense. And especially now you take a look around the AFC West division and you just say like, oh, these are four extremely high powered offenses. How do we compete? Well, your offense can hang and hung in those games and can put points on the board if you can change the tide and limit a possession, limit one score. You're in the playoffs, right? Like, and I mean, you might win the division. You might have home field, right? Like there's things that could have gone differently. And I don't know. When I look at, and I'm not even talking about the draft because I'm actually a pretty big fan of what they did in the draft as well, but just free agency alone. Khalil Mack, remember when you text me and they said, and you were like, they just traded for Khalil Mack, or like it was like somebody else's tweet, like rumor that this is getting done. And I was like, well, kiss your next two first goodbye. Right. That's like what this league
was
is.
Verbatim what you said.
That's literally what I just said.
And that's exactly what I thought. And when they got Khalil Mack, I'm like, range of emotion, like, fuck, what did we give up for him? This was a desperation move. And then when you saw what they gave up, it's like, oh, all right, I can live with that shit.
For the listeners to clarify, it was a second round pick in 2022 that equated to the 43rd overall pick and a 2023 sixth round pick. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a far cry from a single first,
Yeah.
two firsts. What is it typically? And I know people like, and myself included, are a little worrisome of Mac playing 7 games last year. But if you take away last season, dude missed 2 games in his entire career. 2 games in his entire career. Now, my concern is a little bit of like he's going into his age 31 season, right? Like the body does break down. Is this a precursor of what's to come? But even
No,
if he
no, no,
is,
no, 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 no. Do not rain on my parade here.
I'm
I'm
not,
the
I'm not,
negative one.
dude. I'm
I,
going to say this for you right now. Even if he is half of what Khalil Mack has been, that's an upgrade. And that bodes really, really well for Joey Bosa. Really well.
how many sacks did he have last year, Khalil Mack?
6 and 7 games.
Okay. How many sacks did Uchenna Nwosu, who started all of our games last year, have?
I'm
Six
going
and
to say, I was going to say,
six.
basically, when you asking the question, it's probably 6 or less.
Yes, exactly. So if you prorate what Khalil Mack he would have easily had double digit sacks. Probably he would have been ranked in the top 6 in sacks if he played the whole season. Now he did get hurt. I get that. Not not sure how much injury versus motivation to go back to a losing team there was. If you know what I'm saying, like why risk further injury? This team's not getting anywhere. I'm not saying he shut it down. Maybe that's what the coaching thought. Thought.
He shut it
So
down. His agent shut it down. I'm telling you right now, right?
yeah,
Like
and everyone
longevity.
who's talking like this has been the chatter about the Khalil Mack and what have you. But why not have the same, this same type of energy for Chandler Jones? He did really good the first couple of games, and then he did a Houdini act. But no one's saying that. No one's saying his play fell off, towards the end of the half of last year. Is that age? Is that, wear and tear on the body and stuff like that? So I get it. But two things. Khalil Mack is going to bring something that the Chargers haven't had in quite some time. Another superstar pass rusher. I loved Melvin Ingram, but I never thought he was on that tier at all. But he's going to bring another superstar pass rusher opposite Joey Bosa. But he doesn't have to be the superstar pass rusher. He doesn't. He can be fine with them too there because of Bosa. So
Yeah,
I
he's not
think,
the number one, and that bodes well for Mac as well, right? Less pressure.
yeah, yeah. So I'm extremely excited, for that. And he knows the scheme, which is tremendous. He brings something to the running, against the stop the run, and he's gonna bring something. I've always thought the Chargers were a finesse team, and they've done something to really get enhance a style of play, which I think they needed to gravitate towards was bully ball. I've always said that. Fortify that offensive line, fortify that defensive line, and beat the shit out of people. But they always were a finesse team these last 6 years. And I'm just happy to see that they've gotten meaner in the trenches because I think that's frankly, you look at a lot of teams, Tampa Bay, uh, the Buccaneers when they won it. You look at the Rams defensive side. You had some bullies in the trenches there, and I think that's imperative if you're really gonna make a deep run in the playoffs.
Agreed. So I'm gonna throw you a little curveball here. I had a couple questions that I kind of peppered that I wanted to ask you related to just your sentiment around the Chargers' entire offseason. But if you were focusing in solely on just free agency and added talent, free agents like during the free agency period, post draft, anybody that was not acquired via the draft, and you can only pick one, what's your who is your favorite addition? See, for me, this is easy, but I needed to ask you.
Favorite addition, probably J.C. Jackson, and because I think it's imperative going up against these potent offenses in the AFC West, especially with Devontae Adams coming on over, especially with Russell Wilson increasing the capabilities of the Denver Broncos passing game. So it has to be J.C. Jackson because what he basically does, he knocks down. And I mean, I don't mean this in a negative way. Asante Samuel doesn't have to be the cornerback one anymore. He doesn't have to be a cornerback one. He could be a cornerback two, and he basically knocks the other starting cornerbacks who are good cornerbacks down a little bit more, where they don't have to try to step up their game and play players that are better than them. So I think it's the J.C. Jackson. However, if I was to say, I was close, and there was another person that I was going to say that you probably didn't think I was going to say, Kyle Van Noy. And let
No,
me tell you,
I honestly, between you and I, and unfairly because you and I have a lot of conversations, I know how gun ho you are about this edition.
okay, I've been gun ho about Kyle Van Noy since BYU. I was furious the fact that the Lions drafted him because I thought that was wasted talent. He had to be a 3-4 outside linebacker, in my opinion, and they didn't run that type of scheme back then. He goes to the Patriots, balls out, goes to Miami, does really well, goes back to the Patriots, plays really well again. What I love about Kyle Van Noy is versatility, and don't let that V word get you all mixed up here. Versatility doesn't mean that Kyle Van Noy can play multiple positions. It means that Kyle Van Noy can play multiple positions really well. He can blitz on the outside as an edge rusher. He can play inside linebacker. Last year he was the top rated linebacker according to PFF for in zone coverage. So he can do a little of everything. He has that experience that they don't have. They were a really young team. They've gotten a little older, and that's fine because they still are a really young team, but they didn't have any experience that was not only have experience, but also good play and capability. And he's a positive influence in that locker room. If I've, started following him on Instagram, and this is stupid, but like he's so excited, and he just you can see he's just bringing everyone more together. He's such a vocal, leader, and he's a fun guy, and everyone just gravitates towards him. So there's so much he does to that team, that's going to be doing for that team, and he can fill in everywhere, anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I thought for me the favorite addition was JC Jackson as well. I think you could argue that this guy's the top corner in football over the last 2 years. I mean, if you look at his interception total over the first 4 years of his career, I forget the names, but like literally like in NFL history, it's himself and like two other people that
Yeah,
have tallied that level of total in the first 4 years. He finds the ball. You know how I feel about defensive backs over even edge rushers. I think you pair him with a lot of talent. And schematically, you mentioned Brandon Staley and what he was doing in 2020. This is kind of his. I don't want to call this guy Jalen Ramsey, but this is like his version. I think what's most appealing about this edition is the contract. I
yes,
just told you that I think this guy is the top corner in football right now, arguably the top corner in football, but his contract wouldn't say that, right? In a year where people
I
are
think it's like
getting
ranked
paid,
sixth. It's
yeah,
like
are getting
sixth.
paid absurd numbers, like he didn't reset the market, which I think there's a lot of shock related to that, right? Like everybody knew JC was on the move. Everybody knew he was going to get paid. It was just like, who's going to pony up and make this guy? He's the next man up, right? He's the next one to get his contract. Who's going to be the team that sets the market? And then you see that the Chargers are the one that they'd been linked to him for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and you see that he makes that decision, and then you see the contract, and you're like, what? That doesn't even make sense to me. You know what I mean? Like what he was brought in for. Like if you listen to the numbers, 5 years, 82.5 million. So a hair over 16 million annually.
I
Like
think
in this
Denzel.
market,
I think like Denzel Ward got like 20 million a year.
yeah,
Denzel Ward is a fantastic cornerback. When we did our show last year, I had him as the top 10 cornerback. Is Denzel Ward $4 million more than
no,
J.C. Jackson? I don't
no,
think so.
no. And this is a win for everybody. This is life changing money for JC Jackson. This man was undrafted, by the way.
Yep.
This is what the New England Patriots do, by the way,
Yep.
right? They just find this talent.
Well, I think Derwin James negotiated a great contract with J.C. Jackson, and if you're a little confused right now, what I'm saying is because Derwin basically recruited J.C. Jackson, and I felt like they talked, and JC's like, I'll come over, get my bag, but I'll save some money for you too, Derwin, because Derwin's going to get locked up real soon, probably within a month or so. Uh,
Let's not go
so
too far down that path because I have a
okay,
question that's semi related to that for you.
okay,
And I don't want to, I only have a very few, so I don't want to lose them.
okay.
So I'm going to steer you a little bit here. So we talked about the free agency additions. Again, I think what I love about the strategy though is for 17 weeks, I listened to you, Lou, talk about how you can't stop the run, right? I heard you
Yeah.
talk about like not being able to stop the run. Then you go and get Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, and Christian Covington as immediate. So Day, I would argue, is going to find his way onto that field a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Austin Johnson and Covington are going to be some nice depth, as you alluded to, and some rotational pieces. But those are big bodies
Yeah.
that clog up the middle. And one thing that I love about the Bosa brothers is they're not just pass rushers. They're complete.
Yes.
They stop the run as well. Khalil Mack can stop the run as well. He's not just a pass rusher. So that defensive line got inherently better. So thinking of free agency before, because I do want to like parlay this into the draft a little bit and talk a little bit about their draft strategy and some of the, your favorite picks that they came away with. Which player that left during the offseason do you think was the unwisest / move that hurt the most? Whether you think it
I
hurts the
can tell
team
you.
the most or hurts
Yeah.
you personally the most?
All right. So if you go to our lads and look at their starting inside linebackers, there's a lot to be desired there. And the one player they let leave, and I still don't understand why, was Kaiser White. We talked about Kaiser White flying all around the field last year. There was a show where you're like, yo, who the hell was number 44? Because he was killing it. I don't understand. He was a converted safety. Showed tremendous ability to go, sideline to sideline. I liked him a lot, and he signed with the Eagles for chump change. And I don't understand why they let Kaiser White leave. Uh, it was a little dumbfounding, but I think that's going to hurt a little more because I feel like they need a little more stability in the middle of that the middle of that linebacking core. And he was the one that flashed the most. He was the one that played the best, played the best ball of all those linebackers. Drew Tranquil, I like Drew Tranquil. Injury histories. Kenneth Murray, looking like we're slowly turning that curve to that B word. I'm not
Yep.
saying he's a bust yet, but it's to
It's
be desired.
You're
And
encroaching
so,
upon it quickly.
yeah, and I feel like Kaiser White would have brought a little more stability. I wonder if this was more of like a general manager decision as opposed to a Staley decision, saying, "Hey, no, we don't want to sign White because he would take away from Kenneth Murray."
So
So that was my knee jerk reaction. Like, really, you let him go for that amount? Is that because you didn't want your golden boy Kenneth Murray, not to see the field because
well,
White was outplaying him?
so that's what the GM in me says, right? Is this was very much a GM decision because of the Kenneth Murray scenario. What so for what he signed with in Philadelphia and what his cap hit is for the year, and I forget the numbers, but it's then they brought in Troy Reader, right? As kind of
Mm-hmm.
like essentially the insurance. And I think Troy Reader costs like a couple $100,000 less a year, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
not even like we're not even talking about millions, we're talking about a couple $100,000 less per year. Now, I see this both ways. So to me, letting Kaiser White too was the one that, as even a non-fan, hurts the most because I became infatuated with his play over the course of the year. And then you see his contract and you're like,
Huh?
I want my team to sign him. Like that's like backup money, right? Like for a guy who's on the field quite a bit. So from Brandon Staley's perspective, it's like, okay, we lose Kaiser White, but Troy Reader has played for me before. I have
Mm-hmm.
familiarity with him. He understands what I'm trying to do. So, hey, no learning curve there, that sort of stuff. But if you were to stack Troy Reader and Kaiser White, like I don't even think it's close that they're the same
Now,
player, you know?
so the reason why they brought in Troy Reader, because Troy Reader is good enough to spot start during certain periods of time for a couple of games here and there. It's not a total liability, but possibly not good enough to keep Kenneth Murray off the field.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm
I,
saying? This has
I do.
nothing to do. This is, in my opinion, this has all to do with Kenneth Murray.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't know if it's the old school in me, because we ain't the young dogs that cover these teams anymore. But it's like I always grew up under the school of thought of like, regardless of position, you can never have enough good players, right? And when good players aren't costing you a ton of money, you keep them. You and I are going to have this exact conversation in a moment about my team in a totally different context. And part of my response is going to be, you just can't have enough good players. Like, I don't know what else to say to you. Like, I don't care what position they play. Like, look what they're doing at safety between Derwin, Nasir, bringing in JT Woods. Like, some of this feels redundant, but you can never have enough good players. Like, they become chess pieces and you can move them around. And if they're really that good, you find a way to make it work. Again, someone like Kaiser White, a converted safety. Like, you know what your nickel package looks like now at this point in time? Like, from a coverage and just like, I
say
just don't understand it.
I'll say this. If you heard what Brandon Staley said about Derwin James, I thought it was telling this offseason. He said, and this is why I knew they're going to resign Derwin James. Everyone talks about you got to build around a quarterback. We have to build around Justin Herbert. My philosophy also, we have to build around Derwin James.
Yeah, quarterback of the defense.
Exactly. So all these safeties that they basically acquired, whether it's via the draft or what have you, it's going to free up James. That's their mentality, and I personally think he's going to be playing a lot more linebacker. So maybe the need for Kaiser White was not as so big because Derwin's going to be coming close to the box, which is going to be extremely beneficial. Because we were talking about this, I think we do like some pre-shows, and sometimes our pre-shows are probably better than our regular shows. But if
just many more expletives,
yeah, and I think we get a little more controversial too. But so if you're a quarterback, and Daniel Jeremiah made this good point. If you're a quarterback and you see Derwin James as a safety, 15 yards, 12 yards from the line of scrimmage, don't you feel a little more comfortable him being back there as opposed to him being closer to the line of scrimmage as a linebacker, where you can blitz him, he can play tight coverage against those tight ends, Kelsey, Waller, and all the other stud tight ends, because you don't know what Derwin James is going to do when he's close to the line of scrimmage. So I really feel like they're going to utilize. They got all these safeties, Adderley, JT Woods, and what have you, so they can free up Derwin James like Brandon Staley envisioned. And that's why I think Derwin James is going to play more linebacker. So maybe that made Kaiser White a little more expendable.
So I'm going to make a prediction for you right now. Bold prediction. Derwin James, I always caveat with if healthy and playing the entire season.
You have to with him.
It will have 2 pick sixes this year. And here's why. You just mentioned the schematics of this. Him playing close to the line of scrimmage. They're going to show early and often that he's coming. And they're going to put that on tape early intentionally that he's coming. So then the quarterbacks, when they're processing things, are like, that guy's coming. They might drop a linebacker. So depending upon alignment, if I have, let's just say I have Kelsey sitting over here off to my left, right? Like slotted out a little bit. And Derwin's kind of hovering in that area. And I get some inclination that Derwin's coming. The expectation is that linebacker that's probably sitting somewhere in between the guard and the tackle from an alignment standpoint, 7 yards off the line of scrimmage, has to fly out to Kelsey, right? That's really difficult to do unless you're uber athletic. So it's going to be hot read, right? That I'm trying to explain to listeners like where the hot read comes into play. We've all seen Wedding Crashers, and it's hot route. This is the concept, right? Like who's the guy who's immediately open at the snap of the ball, which changes the complexion of the play. That's where you're supposed to go with the rock, and that's what quarterbacks are taught. And then all of a sudden, he's going to show I'm coming, and I'm not, and he's going to be right in a passing lane. And he's going to be right in a passing lane, spread out on the formation where there's nobody's going to catch him. So I'm telling you, 2 pick sixes this year from Derwin James because of that threat. And this is all brought to you by and made possible by Lou. Tell him who that I've been telling you about that you guys drafted that lets this happen to be able to bring Derwin down a little bit more aggressively, specifically in like nickel packages. Tell him, Lou. Tell him.
I'll believe it. I'll see it when I believe it.
All right, Mahomes.
Weston and I have a difference of opinion with JT Woods. I did not like that pick whatsoever. He's the safety from Baylor, and Weston was a big fan of JT Woods. I'm just not a fan of him. I feel like I know he was a quote unquote ball hawk, back in Baylor. But if you really look at his interceptions, those were the tip priority. They just fell in his hand, type of stuff. Like good, was a good play. What's the thing like lucky place, yeah.
Good players find the football, buddy. Good
Yeah,
players find the football.
time, right time, right place type of stuff.
And sometimes the football finds you, but
Yeah,
that's right time, right place means in right position as well.
For me, the jury's still out. Out on JT Woods. Obviously, I just want to see it. Because I'm not a believer right now. I'm a huge skeptic. So,
all right, for the listeners, Lou, tell them what you sent me two days ago. What was the Instagram? How many picks does he have in camp so far?
I think I saw something like around 4.
Yeah. So does shirts and helmets translate to on the field?
Guess what? Though the latest pick was a tip ball to him.
Yeah, bro, I'm telling you. Have you ever met somebody in your life that you're like, this person's just good at life, right? Like everything falls their way. It's no different. Like, what do you think? Like the Minka, think about the way that Troy Polamalu used to play football. Think about the way Minka Fitzpatrick plays football. Like, it's not an accident that they're scooping up these fumbles and going to the house. Like, they're in the right position. They're trusting their instincts. They're trusting things. I'm not, dude. Let me pause for a moment. I am not saying JT Woods is of that variety. What I'm saying, his biggest benefit to the Chargers and what changes the defense is in those nickel situations, they're going to be 3 safeties. They're not going to be a slot corner. Nasir and Derwin are not coming off the field. They're going to bring in Woods, especially early in his career while he's still learning the defense and learning things. And they're going to be like, bro, the top portion of the field is yours. This guy has Olympic track speed. He can get to either boundary if that ball hangs in the air long enough. So they're going to be like, you stay here in between the hashes and you react based on that quarterback's eyes, and where you see that lead arm pointing, you go. And that lets you bring Derwin down. And I think Derwin, again, I'm making another prediction for you, dude. And I'm on my game tonight. I'm telling you, if healthy for the whole year, Derwin James will be in the defensive player of the year conversation, because he's going to be able to do more of what he is really good at. Like, I would put him on the same caliber. All right, we all knock Jamal Adams because he can't cover anybody and he's a liability in coverage, etc. But you know what Jamal Adams is really good at? He's good at being in the box, stopping the run, and getting to the quarterback. Derwin is really good at that as well. The added element to his game is he can take away people in the passing game. We saw it this year against Kansas City, where in what was it, in the first 3 quarters, Kelsey had one catch for nothing.
4 yards. One catch
for 4 yards. He goes off the field injured, and then Kelsey lights it up. That's not an accident. That's not an accident. It's a combination of things. It's that player being really good, and then the offense scheming away from that player who's really good because he takes that option away.
Yeah,
dude, I'm telling you, he stays healthy all year. The way this defense is going to look, feeling confident that they don't have to stack the box against the run if they got enough beefy, good bodies up there. Derwin's going to be in the defensive player of the year conversation. I have zero doubt about that.
I want to bring up 2 points. First point will be, if you look at, I still think, even though I allude to the fact that I think 5
which would make Derwin James in the top 3 defensive players in the league. Just saying.
No, from all, we're focusing on the defense. I think it's important because that was obviously, the elephant in the room, at the end of last year. It cost them a trip to the playoffs. If you look down the stretch, they choked against the Texans and they choked against the Raiders. So 2 points I want to bring up. Okay. The first point, even though they brought in 8 players, on this defense from outside, 60% of those players that they brought in have familiarity with Brandon Staley's scheme. I still think it's going to be a little learning curve for everyone to gel together.
So it's going to be for the defense.
It's going to be
for the defense.
Exactly. Secondly, when they do start rolling, one thing everyone lauded last year about the Chargers offense. 5th. It was ranked 5th in the NFL. Really good. You know what though? They were ranked 25th in number of drives, meaning like they were extremely efficient. Whenever they got their ball, they would score, but they never got the ball often enough to put more points up. And with the additions they made with J.C. Jackson, interceptions, J.T. Woods, the ball hawk, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, sack fumble specialist, if they can just, this defense can just somewhat improve on the run defense and increase the turnovers, or three and outs, this offense should be even better because it didn't change at all. This offense, you got to think about it, and you could say that's you don't mess with perfection. I'm always a firm believer that there's always room for more. But all that being said, this is the first time I think this is good that the offense didn't change because Justin Herbert has not had consistency from offensive standpoint. This is the first time in 6 years he's had the same offensive coordinator since high school. Since high
and
school,
and the same skill players, right?
exactly. So I
Um,
think he's gonna, him playing with the same type, same players, nothing really changing. Even though they didn't really add too much to this offense, I think that it's just that second year in this scheme is going to be, huge benefit for Justin Herbert.
all right. So real quick, I don't want to spend time here because we did a
Okay.
lot of like draft
Mhm.
recap, but I do want to get your opinion on. All right. I'm going to take the obvious out of this equation, which is Zion Johnson, who's going to be an immediate contributor
Yep.
to this, your first round pick. We've heard ad nauseum how pleased you are that that was the pick versus reaching for certain individuals, etc. So outside of Zion in this draft, who is your favorite addition?
I could be corny as hell and say Khalil Mack, but I won't.
No, in the draft. No. Oh,
Yeah,
well, yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah. You
yeah,
could,
yeah,
you
yeah,
could, yeah,
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 I
yeah.
could. But believe it or not, it's funny. I was the only one that was fine with the Isaiah Spiller selection, and I'm a because they've had no one behind Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler played tremendous last year, but damn, they had no one to spell him whatsoever. Justin Jackson was good, but could never stay on the field. I think Isaiah Spiller, first of all, they got him in the fourth round, so I love the value there. And I think he's going to bring something that they haven't had in quite some time is that big, powerful back. And what that's really going to do is change the perception because they have a big, powerful offensive line. So he's coming into a good situation. It's not like he's going behind a makeshift off the offensive line. So he's going to have some room to run behind those hog mollies. All right. So what he's going to do and provide for them is help spell Austin Eckler. And most importantly, if people are playing those two high safeties, look on defense now that's catching like wildfire, he's going to make those safeties come up because they're going to have to stop him. So I love the fact that I love the Isaiah Spiller selection. I hope they get creative and put Eckler and Spiller together on the field because Spiller, a lot of people don't know that he can catch the ball. I think he had like 78 catches in college. A big back that can catch. You know, I've always thought he kind of reminded me a little of like maybe Kareem Hunt esque. Wasn't not fast, but he's big, he's powerful, he glides and can catch. So I feel like he's going to be able to bring another dynamic, a more physical type of offense that they really haven't had, and that's going to be that counter punch to those two high safety looks that they're going to see a lot of.
So it's funny. We all know how I feel about JT Woods. I too wanted to say Isaiah Spiller, but I won't. I won't be redundant here. Since I'm on a roll with predictions, I'm telling you he's going to be your RB1 by the end of the year. I'm just telling you. Yeah,
No,
yeah, he will
no,
be. Yeah, he will be.
no.
So I'll go with your 6th round pick, Jamari Salyer. They're slotting him in as a guard. But I don't know, man. This dude played right tackle and left tackle for Georgia in national championship games in the SEC. Like, we talked about that versatility and the ability to play different positions. I mean, the guy's 6'4, 325 pounds. I think he dropped something like 30, 40 pounds to going into his junior year to slide over to left tackle from right tackle. And right tackle is a position that the team's been looking at, right? And reevaluating. I'm not saying this guy slides in, but I don't know, man. Just his pedigree and where he comes from, the fact that he was a 6th round pick, like I've seen people go in the 1st and 2nd round that I'm like, and this guy, this was a midday 2 guy in my personal opinion, and to get him into the 6th round, I think fans should be excited about that, because I think come camp, when the pads are on, you're going to see him like every day. You're going to get a new report from the Charger beat writers that are going to say he lined up at right tackle today. He took some shots at right guard, left guard. You know what I mean? Like he's going to line up. You know what I mean? Like could he be your swing tackle? Right? God forbid. Like, could he do those things? And I think if you're getting that type of production and that type of conversation out of your 6th round pick, like that's a home run all day to me. That's a home run.
Fantastic value. He has tremendous amount of experience up and down the offensive line. And once again, we keep on talking about versatility, and they are really becoming a versatile team, not just offense or defense, but the whole team is becoming extremely versatile. So I definitely love the Salyer pick myself too, because how can you go wrong with an offensive lineman from Georgia in round 6 that has played really well in the SEC, and that really should have gone probably end of round 2, early round 3 types value there.
All right. One final question, and if you're cool, we can parlay into.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's talk. Yeah, because
What unresolved issue concerns you the most heading into camp?
I mean, come on. This is a softball question here. It's that It's the right tackle. If you look at first of all, if you look at the AFC West, no one has a good right tackle. No one does. I don't. It's all question marks up and down the AFC West, which is ironic because a lot of the teams in the AFC West made a conscious effort to load up on pass rushers from both sides of the ball. So for all 4 teams to kind of ignore it somewhat, it's really interesting. Broncos probably did the best job by signing Billy Turner as their right tackle. So I do like Billy Turner a lot. So, but if you look at the other 3 teams in the division, it's a lot to be desired. Don't know really what the plan is. There's rumblings of moving left guard Matt Filer out to right tackle, where he has a lot of experience because that's where he played with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then slotting in one of the many guards that they have on the on the depth chart, a left guard. That's option number 1, or maybe option number 2. You're also looking at Trey Pipkins. Trey Pipkins, he did good last year in the 2 spot starts that he made, which is shocking. He was a former 3rd round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. The thing with him, they overreached for him at that 3rd round, and I just feel like, what are you expecting from him? This guy has not really showed anything in his first couple of years in the league. He played well in 3 games. And now you're expecting him to maybe hold the anchor down at that right tackle position. I don't know, but you can't have studs up and down the offensive line. It's really hard. I think their thought process is this: if you just have one problem on the offensive line, it's kind of easier to, I'm going to say, scheme. Meaning, like, you plan for, like, right tackle is going to be a shit show, so this is what we're going to have to do, for certain situations. Where they had 2 issues last year, right guard and right tackle. I don't really foresee them having 2 issues anymore on the offensive line. So maybe it's more of by committee, that right tackle, and we're just going to scheme better. So I think that's the area of concern, because there's still guys out there, Riley Reef, Darrell Williams, that I think can provide some value and versatility, by the way, because that seems something that they are coveting, that would really fit nice there. But I don't think they're going to sign or kick the tires on anyone.
I mean, listen, good problem to have. There hasn't been a team that has literally pro ballers at all 5 positions up and down the offensive line since like the early 90s Dallas Cowboys, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it just doesn't exist. But like you said, you can scheme around one position. Now, the beautiful part about me coming up with some of these questions to ask you is I got time to think about my answer in advance around some of these things. So I listed here that the right tackle was definitely some concern. I think the other concern I might have is wide receiver depth. You know how much I love 13. I love Keenan Allen, but he showed signs of age last year. He wasn't the same. Mike Williams just got some pretty hefty money. Has he lived up to that production? I think we'd both argue not, but like based on what you paid him versus what other wide receivers who have limited production were getting paid, like probably the responsible move in this particular market, to say the least. I was hoping that instead of Zion Johnson, there was a very specific wide receiver that they might have taken at
You and me
16 or
both, buddy.
17 all
You and me
overall.
both.
But I also think the biggest lingering issue is the Derwin contract. It's going to get done. That's not really necessarily my concern.
Oh, that's getting done before.
But
August
it's going to get it
1st.
done for a lot of money. A lot of money.
It was never going to get done for little.
No, but like
the timing of that,
always,
the timing on that Minka thing, I feel like
hurts
really
a little bit. They should have been first. You want to be first to the punch in those instances.
Yeah, but now you're hearing things like, he had off-season shoulder surgery to repair a labrum issue they had. I feel like they're working through this. It's interesting to see what he'll get because, in my opinion, I feel he's better than Minka. However, what Minka has over him is, guess what? I'm on the field. My ability is availability. So, and that's not a slight to Minka. Minka's really good. I love Minka.
Derwin's just a better player. I don't think there's an argument here.
But you got to stay on that field, man. And he seems to be addicted to every offseason. He seems to be addicted to that offseason knife and that offseason rehab, man.
That's going to be an issue with that big contract that's going to come. It's going
to get done. And let me tell you why it's going to get done. J.C. Jackson didn't take a little discount, knowing,
to not play with his boy,
exactly. And Derwin James said in some conferences that, like, hey, I don't have, this will get done. Like, there was definitely some reassuring words that he said this offseason. And I think it's a no-brainer. It's going to get done. And if you look at when they signed Joey Bosa to that contract, it was like around like end of July, early August. I think it's the same thing.
So all in all, and we'll transition here, I literally give the Chargers an A for their offseason. And I don't think you can give them any other grade. There's 31 other teams in this league that are bidding for good players, and they got quite a few of them this offseason. Desirable location. Clearly people want to go play in LA. Don't know why they want to pay those California state taxes. My team deals with this as well, but nonetheless, if I'm a Chargers fan, I'm walking away on paper, and this is all on paper, everything's got to align, feeling really good walking into this offseason.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm beyond, I still feel like I'm fucking dreaming right now because the amount of intelligence that went to this offseason is just shocking from a franchise that has always half-assed it or not shown tremendous intelligence. So,
yeah. So cool to parlay and
switch
up a little bit.
Let's go a little further up north now. Let's go to San Francisco.
Go up to the Bay.
Yeah. So, your 49ers, pretty quiet offseason, nothing crazy, no storylines or anything like that. So I think this is
quiet as a mouse, baby.
Yeah, I think this might be a little lull in our show. So, all kidding aside, man, I feel like
3-4 minutes and we'll be done.
Yeah, all kidding aside, man, I feel like San Francisco is one of the most polarizing teams in the NFL. You have people saying that they're gonna make the playoffs and make a deep run because they've improved. They brought everyone back. They've improved at the quarterback position. And then you have people saying they're missing the playoffs, and which is a little shocking because the NFC is a little weak. Why is this team so polarizing, do you feel like? Like, what is your thought process? Why are there so many variants of opinions when talking about the 49ers success in this year?
Because opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one.
And I understand, but why isn't there a consensus, though?
Because they're fans. Like, a lot of like what we hear is and you know what, dude? 5 Lombardis, that'll do that to you. What are the other polarizing teams that you know so much about? Dallas Cowboys, right? They seem to be pretty polarizing. New England Patriots, if you're not a New England fan, everybody hates the New England Patriots, and they draw the harshest of criticisms. Every offseason, Bill Belichick is basically mocked for what he does, but yet time and time and time again, he proves everybody wrong. If I had to summarize the 49ers offseason outside of the 2 main storylines that we're going to talk about here in just a moment, I'd say, to be expected as advertised. You and I talked about this going into the offseason. There was literally zero expectation from a knowledgeable fan, zero expectations that many splashes were going to be made. Reasons for this: tight cap. Other reason for this: we just don't traditionally do it. Another reason for it: just played in the NFC Championship. It's got to mean there's a little bit of talent on your roster, few positions to be had. Like, you're not the Jacksonville Jaguars that can just throw money at everybody. Like, you got your own players you got to retain because you don't want them walking. There are lingering contract issues that are taking place and people getting paid. But, and we will dive into this, I'm satisfied, and I will convey my satisfaction because a lot of the things that took place, Lou, I told you they were going to take place. I told you that they were going to happen. We have receipts, right? Like, one of which I said literally over 7 months ago at this point in time, like, don't be surprised when this happens. And it's more towards the quarterback position than it is the other saga. That prediction came a little bit later, but like literally in season on Jesse's show, I told you this was going to happen with Jimmy. It just made too much sense. I didn't expect some certain things. So before we get into those topics, because I know you want to ask me about those topics.
I'm chomping at the bit.
I know you are. So the big splash was Charvarius Ward, cornerback from Kansas City, an ascending player, making $14 million a year over a 3-year contract. But that was the splash free agency signing. That's it, right? That's literally it. And I'll never forget it because you and I were covering the NFC West and AFC West on the show. And we had what's his face on from
Pete
from the Chiefs. And we were talking about things, and like we literally had mentioned that, like, hey, Charvarius Ward's on their radar, and then we hang up and stop the show and stop recording, and you are BSing afterwards in our little room, and the announcement comes over my phone that they just signed Charvarius Ward, and I was so pissed because I didn't even get to be like, hey, let me announce this like on the show.
Right?
It was like the show was already done and completed, and it had to come back. Everything else, free agency wise, again, unless you're like a diehard passionate fan, you're going to look at this and say, like, why, what doesn't make sense? Ray McLeod, Oren Burks, George Odom, Kerry Hyder, Kamoko Toure. Like, these are names that most people don't know. But of those first 3 names that I just mentioned, Ray McLeod, Oren Burks, George Odom, they actually are immediate impact players to this team in one very special way related to the, no pun intended, special teams. Do not let that Green Bay game in the playoffs fool you where our special teams like literally won the game for us and our offense did nothing. This special teams was abysmal all year long. Abysmal in the return game. On the defensive side of special teams. So on kickoff, punt, just giving up too much yardage. I mean, dude, we had like Jawan Jennings, who's basically like our 3rd or 4th wide receiver, running down there as a gunner, trying to make tackles. I mean, he's like a 4.7 speed guy. You know what I mean? Like, you need your gunners. These should be 4.3, 4.4 guys all day long that get down there like as the ball's landing. And we just had none of that. I mean, dude, we had Ambry Thomas at times returning kicks. Jermichael Hasty returning kicks. Dude, we were even throwing Deebo Samuel out there to return kicks. And that's not good. That's not how you're supposed to use your offensive weapon, is returning kicks. Like, that's a recipe for injury. So like someone like Ray McLeod, actually, like I said, that's an immediate impact. That's an immediate, I have my returner. And he's been very successful at it in the NFL for quite a few years. The George Odom signing, I actually like more than just for special teams. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him start opposite Jimmy Ward at safety, only competing again if everything that you and I have heard offline from certain sources is that Jaquiski Tart is all but gone with no intention of bringing him back, even though he's still a free agent. That leaves Hufanga and Tarvarius Moore. I don't have a ton of confidence in either one of them. Odom's going to get every opportunity. But everything else was just like, you talked about it with the Chargers, depth. Everything else was depth. Kerry Hyder. Hey, he had a great year in 2019. He walked in 2020. Didn't have a great year. He's right back. This all has to do with Chris Kasurek and what he does with defensive linemen. Same with Toure, who's never played a full season. When One of the things that I do like that they did is bring Jeff Wilson back at running back. I love taking a shot on Jason Verrett on another 1-year veteran, low risk like deal, because especially with the addition of Charvarius Ward, having Emmanuel Mosley, doesn't have to be on the field right away. And his injury happened literally in week 1, right? So by the time we get to week 1 of this year, in theory, he should be pretty darn close to a full recovery and get an opportunity to get some reps. So this is not something that like should linger till, small chance he starts on the pup, very small chance, but not a guarantee to find him there. So but again, one splash move. A little disappointment in free agency as a fan. I asked you before about like, hey, who's the player that you think like hurt the team or even hurt your heart the most?
Hold on. You're killing me here. You know what? I'm just gonna let you talk. I'm gonna go to bed. All right. So you just
No. I'll stop.
You
I'll stop.
literally
I'll stop.
no. Okay, no. Go ahead. No, I was literally gonna say you're talking about some of the acquisitions you guys made this offseason. Let's flip the coin. Let's look at the glass half empty. Who's that one guy? Is it Tart or is there someone else that you lost in the offseason that you're like, ah, shit, I didn't like that?
Yeah. So there are 4 names that come to mind, and this is just me
4.
being a fan. There's just me being a fan and seeing these 4 guys flourish in this scheme on this team. But if you're holding a gun to my head and I had to only say one, I'd say DJ Jones going to the Denver Broncos.
Interesting.
But he was, no pun intended, but he was the meat of that defensive line. Like, we talk about like what special defensive linemen do, and it's like, is he going to ever have a 10-sack season in his life? No, but he does get up the middle. His first step is explosive. He's an animal in eating up the run game, and he lives in people's backfields. And they didn't have a lot of money into him because he was like, he wasn't a first or a second round pick. You know what I mean? Like, he was a later steal that just flourished. But the reality is that there was no way in hell they were actually going to pay $10 million a year annually for a defensive tackle.
See, I'm shocked you said that, and 2 reasons. You have Javon Kinlaw coming back. I know the jury's still out on him, but like it's just that's an interesting person to replace DJ Jones. I'm not saying they're the same skill set. They don't. I get it, but he can provide something up that middle. Secondly, I'm shocked you did not go on the offensive line to protect your second-year quarterback in Laken Tomlinson. Looking at your offensive line right now, a little in that interior, it's a little dicey.
Yeah. Listen,
so I thought like losing him.
You thought, yeah,
I thought it was huge because it kind of knocked some of that stability in the interior, especially with losing, Mac.
Yep. So, yes, like losing Laken hurts, but the one thing that I applaud this, and you say it all the time, that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are very intelligent, right? Like, they impress you in some ways. And what I'm impressed by in some areas is that I feel like they see 2 years in advance. And they knew this was going to happen. They knew when the contract was out. They looked around at other contracts that they knew they were going to have to work through. And Laken was going to be a casualty of that. They knew that. And that hence bring in the drafting of Aaron Banks last year. Is Aaron Banks going to be the same player as Laken Tomlinson? Probably not. But Laken Tomlinson, once upon a time, was a first-round bust that came over and all of a sudden was a Pro Bowl caliber player on this offensive line that didn't miss a game, by the way, in 5 years with us, right? So, like, yeah, that hurts, but the plan was there, right? So that softens the blow a little bit for me. I just don't think jury is definitely still out on Javon Kinlaw. I need to see more. I need to see him. Availability is the best best ability. Need to see him on the field. Not sure how that body's holding up. Those knees are holding up. But DJ was just always somebody that I could count on. Just a non-household name, unless you were a 49ers fan, that just got the job done. Like, he was the model of consistency up the middle for that defensive line. And I love him. Like, dude, I'm telling you, the Broncos got a player. Like, they had to pay for him, but the Broncos got a player. He's a solid player. The other one was K'Wan Williams. I love the Shark. You've heard me on this show say a number of times that he is definitively the best slot corner in the NFL. and he wasn't even had for all that much money to go to Cleveland, but it was time. You know what I mean? It's been a few years. He's another year older. He was nicked up a little bit, throughout the year. So is that body breaking down? And it's just a spot that I think because he can't line up outside. Like he can't line up outside the numbers. And I think it was just a spot where the 49ers felt like it was an opportunity for them to go younger and cheaper. And I think they did address some of that in the draft and even with who they have right now. And that's why Verrett is so key. If Verrett could be half the player he was, but stay on the field, that gives them flexibility with Mosley to be able to move down to the slot, who's been a proven player. So, I think they're calculated in this. So to me, to answer your question, it's DJ Jones.
Yeah, I think, my opinion, I think your defense is going to be fine. You, looking at the, who you have on, throughout like the depth chart and our lads, I think you guys are going to be fine. My main concern for you guys is twofold. Is that offensive line? A lot of uncertainty, starting from your right tackle Mike McGlinchey coming off, a big injury. Still a lot of uncertainty what's going on with him. And then that, in the interior of the offensive line, Aaron Banks, liked him at Notre Dame. I get it. Interesting to see how he fits with San Francisco. For the fact was, I felt like he's more of like a power scheme type of guy at Notre Dame, and you guys are obviously more of a zone scheme. Unless I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you guys are a wide zone scheme, and now you're relying on him to pick up where Lake and Tomlinson left off. You're also looking at Jake Brendel as your starting center, and also Daniel Brunskill, who did good, but in spot starts too. He did good with the 49ers. That's a lot. And where I think it's really going to impact you guys is not the running game. Shanahan can scheme that shit out, that running game. Ridiculous. So your running game is going to be fine, man. It always is, always will be. It's a constant. I mean, there's three things in life that's certain: death, taxes, and the Shanahan running run
No
offense.
doubt.
All right. My issue is that pass protection. With a quarterback hasn't played in a long time,
still going to hold the ball longer.
Exactly. This is my concern. And yeah, you can do things like move the pocket and what have you, and will move better than Jimmy G. All right. However, you still do have to beat people. How quarterbacks always beat, 9 times out of 10 beat teams. You beat them in the pocket.
Yeah.
So
that's why.
Is that your biggest concern, or am I trying to create this?
No, that's
narrative?
my biggest concern. No, you're not creating a narrative. It's a huge concern, especially when I think of young, inexperienced quarterbacks who just tend to maybe not trust their read, not necessarily trust what they see pre-snap, so they tend to hold the ball a little bit longer. It's just it happens, right?
Hey, the good thing is that Shanahan offense is very easy to understand, and it's not complicated whatsoever.
No, but that's why you draft people with a brain between their ears, and I'm certain that we did do that. Where I draw a little, if Jimmy was still the quarterback, I'd be the starting quarterback, I should say. I'd be tremendously, I'd be much more concerned because of like the moving the pocket, using your legs, buying a little bit of time, like that sort of thing. So I think there are times where blocking for somebody like a Lamar Jackson and much more mobile quarterbacks is more difficult because like you don't know where they're always going to be, right? So like that's hard. Like you don't know where to block them. But I think you're going to see Kyle keep Trey in the pocket, and the instruction's going to be tackles, just run them up field, right? And he can sneak in behind and step up and do those things and trust his legs a little bit more and buy a little time. But I'm not here to minimize what you just said. Like it's a concern, man. Like it's a concern. Like losing Mac, I think again, they probably thought that was realistic. I think they tried to do some things in the draft to get some. I think they're comfortable with Brendel, who knows the offense, has been around it for a while. Is he Alex Mack? No. Is he JC Treader? No. You know what I mean? Like, but he'll be serviceable. I'm not as concerned about Brunskill because my favorite thing about Brunskill and the ongoing joke in the 49er world is he is Aaron Donald's daddy. Yeah. Like he owns Aaron Donald. I'm more concerned about McGlinchey. I've been concerned about McGlinchey for years, let alone coming off of like he just struggles in pass pro. He's a great tackle in the running game.
And if he's not even suitable, if he's still not able to, play where he did, prior, regardless, like who is that swing tackle? Like it's just it's kind of like a recipe to disaster for a quarterback that's still so young, still so new, and hasn't played a lot of ball. So, and I understand you were talking about the tackles, just make the edges run upfield. That's fine. My concern is not the tackles per se; it's more of that interior offensive line and the pressure they're going to allow. Because I do think they're going to want Lance to, for the most part, to beat, to be more of a pocket passer. Yes. I'm not saying he's not going to be. Picture like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson really wants to throw the, he will move.
Patrick Mahomes. They want to throw the ball, but they can move all over the field when they need to.
The issue is that interior pressure is a bitch, and you cannot escape that.
Nope.
Or it's harder to escape that. So it's that interior offensive line that make me sweat a little bit if I was a 49ers fan.
No doubt.
All right, so
I'm sweating it.
Yeah, so if only you guys had a little more money to spend, like around $20 million more. Maybe you could have been more active in free agency, or maybe you could have addressed and signed your own. And I think you can tell from my pompous prick voice right now that we're going to get somewhere. No, enough with the foreplay, Weston. Enough with the foreplay. We're going right. We're diving in.
Just stick it in.
You ready? Jimmy G.
Yeah.
Are Kyle and Lynch being smart with this Jimmy G situation? And why are they not?
And why are they not? And why are they not?
I answered the question for you, but go ahead.
I know.
Because I know we went hard at this one.
We did. I'm gonna reposition this. I don't think they're being smart. I think they're being prudent. So, as the fan,
does prudent mean arrogant?
I think it's a synonym if you look it up in Webster's dictionary. I'm pretty confident. So the fan in me that thinks they're a general manager and thinks they play for the team and sits in the front office. I told you the biggest value of Jimmy was to release him in the offseason, regardless of what you think you're going to get in return, because I did think that $25 million provided a lot of flexibility in these scenarios. Doesn't mean that they were going to use it to go make a big splash in free agency. Doesn't mean that they were going to use it to extend Bosa and Debo, because that's already been calculated and accounted for. But like where they sit right now, today, post Alex Mack, uncertainty about McGlinchey and his health and what that looks like. You mentioned some names that are out there, right tackle in the league, right, that are household names for the most part, that aren't $2-3 million a year players, right? Like that money does become a little valuable. So but what did I say on Jesse's show all the way? I honestly do that. This was like early December, maybe late November. If we go back and check when we talked about it, I said, don't be surprised when he's on the roster in 2022. Like I literally said that. Like I would not be surprised in the slightest bit. Why am I not surprised? I'm not surprised because I think the 49ers value him more than anybody else does. And I think John Lynch and Shanahan do carry a swag of arrogance to them that says, hey, this is what our value is. And if you're not going to give it to us, okay, we get them for another year. What was I saying before about Kaiser White? You can never have enough good football players, even at the most important position. And listen, is Jimmy G a great quarterback? No. But in 3 years, he's played in 2 NFC championships game and been to a Super Bowl. It's got a little, you know what I mean? Like he's got a winning pedigree. The team is, by record, infinitely better when has been the starting quarterback. So what better insurance policy if the player that you just invested in, something happens?
Okay.
Why do you hate it? You hate it because it's a backup quarterback carrying a $25 million price tag.
No, I'm going. Okay, there's. All right. Yes. First of all, that $25 million price tag is prohibiting you from making a more complete team. And you're saying you can never have too many good players. Really, did you really think he was good last year? I know he was serviceable at times. He played good, but I wouldn't categorize him as a good player. So I disagree with that notion. And yeah, I'm sorry. Not only does it prohibit you from making moves to bolster this team that's on the brink possibly of going a deep playoff run is for the second year in a row. But I think it kind of messes with Trey Lance's head. And I know this is where we differ. We talked about this. And you probably said, oh, they probably talked to Trey Lance like, hey, don't worry, don't worry. You're the starting quarterback this year. We're just figuring this thing out. Just hang tight there. But come on, man. Trey Lance, you said he's intelligent, right? You said he's smart, right? That's that narrative, and that has been said before in the past. And guess what? You know, teams lie. So what happens if Trey Lance comes out real slow and loses to the Bears week one, not playing well, and Jimmy G's still on the roster? Okay. And then let's say he just is mediocre and they start off slow. You don't think they're going to, they're going to ride that wave out if they had Jimmy G on their team? That Trey Lance is always going to be looking over the backside, his shoulder to see, when are they going to pull me type stuff. Now, if they had Nick Mullins on there, they ain't putting Nick Mullins out there.
Come on, bro. Nick Mullins is one of the greatest backup quarterbacks to ever walk the face of the earth. I will not have you slander Nick Mullins.
I disagree. It's Charlie Whitehurst, and you're 100% wrong. Clipboard Jesus. So, all kidding aside, I think it has such a huge ripple effect for numerous reasons why this is such a detriment that Jimmy G should not be on this roster right now, and it's doing more harm than good. And I'm sorry, you're saying you can never have too many good players? Guess what? You only can play one quarterback. When we're talking about Kaiser White, you can have multiple linebackers on the field, but the fact that there's only one quarterback that plays, so it's not like you can incorporate Jimmy G into the offense so they both thrive. That doesn't how it works. I think this is an awful move. I think this is where they show their arrogance, and it's just crazy. This is such a stupid move because they are such smart football people, and I'm totally befuddled why they're dragging this out. Is this an emotional move? Like they can't get over this their old ex-girlfriend here type of stuff? I just think, and this is my opinion, I think that they should have brought this, dog out by the back of the barn, put open up the double barrel shotgun, put the bullets in, close the shotgun, cock it, and say, good night, old Yella, and put it to rest. They should have got rid of him a while. They should have cut him a while ago.
All right, so I'm going to steal a line from you that you've said to me many of times on this show. Let me tell you why you're wrong. So why you're wrong is because I have the utmost faith, and there are draft signals and other things that have happened along the way that signify to me that it's been clearly communicated that this is Trey Lance's job to lose. Now let me extrapolate upon that. Last year, you make the move away from Jimmy and go to Trey at any of those points in the year, that move is made. You can't go back to Jimmy unless there's an injury. Given where Trey is, given his mentality, given his lack of experience and play over the last few, if there are struggles out of the gate with a roster that, for all intents and purposes, is built to win now, you can bridge. You can go to Jimmy for a few weeks and come back to Trey and not destroy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When was the last time something like that has ever worked?
Doesn't matter. There's a first time for everything, and I'm telling you, this is why you have to have faith in the people that you draft, and this is all about communication. This is all about behind the scenes shit that you and I are not privy to, that other people are not privy to. As long as these conversations and possibilities are being discussed, which I believe they are, it's not an issue. Here's another reason why it's not an issue. Jimmy's not that guy. Like, he's just not that guy. He's not a distraction. He's a distraction because the media makes him a distraction, right? And that's what the people do. But I promise you, in that locker room, It's not a distraction.
Well,
Now,
I know Robert Kraft would think that you're wrong there. That he's not a distraction.
well, he's not fucking Jed York's wife. Like, what do you want me to tell you? So
Well, you can. Well, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors, like you said before.
he would have been thrown. I assure you, is the way the Yorks operate. He would have been long gone if that had happened. Here's the reality, dude. This thing will get ironed out right around camp. Injury, something along those lines, desperation. You don't know what's going to shake out in Cleveland, and Baker's not there, and what this Deshaun's going to look like. And then all of a sudden you get something for him. Like, I do think there's an element of pride here that they feel that this quarterback's valued. They think his record speaks for itself, and they're not necessarily just willing to part with nothing. They wanted to get something.
I want a Weston Smith prediction right here. What happens with Jimmy G this offseason? Is he cut? Is he traded?
I think he's cut through camp when they realize the market's not necessarily there for them, and they're just like, it's time. I think if you held on this long, you might as well, my personal opinion is, if you held on this long, you might as well hang on through the season, because you never know what's going to happen. You at least have till week 6 in trade deadlines. And then you're on the hook for the salary anyway, and that makes him tradable. What makes him not tradable in the beginning is, like, that's a really big contract, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So, like, that lowers the sex appeal. The injury, that kind of, like, not that the injury came out of nowhere, but the surgery came out of nowhere. Like, guys still got to pass a physical. And people are forgetting this fact, Lou, is that everybody's like 25 million in savings, 25 million in savings. That's actually a false number. And it's false because, given the surgery, should he not pass a physical, which he wouldn't post surgery, there's an injury guarantee in that. If you cut him, that's to the tune of like $8 million. So yeah, so it's $17 million savings, right? Like, it's still a significant amount of money, but it's not what people think it is. Like, that's just the number when you go to, like, over the cap and look at it, but that's not actually the reality given the scenario.
Regardless, they can use all the money they can.
Sure
right
could.
now.
Sure could. I won't even dispute that. What I'm telling you is this will probably shake out in camp in some way, shape, or form. But why I'm not worried about it is partly because I foresaw this happening, right? So mentally, I'm already prepared and equipped for it. And I do think there's some justification there. The only thing that makes it justifiable is these conversations have to be taking place. And I have to assume that they are evident by, again, everybody looks good and everybody's the best player in the world and everybody's the best leader in the world in May and June and in July before you get to camp and the pads get on. I get all of that. But they all talk about Trey. They all talk about how special he is, how he's acting, carrying himself as a leader. Nothing that I hear or see gives me any indication that this dude is self-conscious or is in his own psyche about, like, who's going to be here and who's not going to be here. You want to know who he cares who's going to be here? Is number 19 going to be here? That's helpful. Is 85 going to be healthy all year? That's helpful. You know what I mean? Maybe what does my O-line look like? That would be helpful. That's I'm telling you, dude's not even worried about 10, and there's no reason he should be.
All right, so I want to make that transition, going from one starting quarterback to your next starting quarterback. Before, when the draft last year took place, you were hyperventilating and you were on a ledge and saying, nervous about Mac Jones was that pick, that you gave up that much capital for Mac Jones. And we've talked numerous times, and the thought process was it had to be Trey Lance. Shouldn't have been Justin Fields. Shouldn't have been Mac Jones. It had to be Trey Lance. Just his tangibilities, his height, his speed, his strength, his arm. It just was, that had to be the guy, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden now there's a boatload of things coming out with Trey Lance. This negative media cloud with Trey Lance. Why is that? Why is there so many doubters with Trey Lance? Is it because
there's not so
Jimmy
many doubters?
G?
There's one or two that are just really loud and very vocal.
That's from the local media, okay,
Yeah.
and the local perception. There's also the national media. Is it is the fact that Jimmy G is still on the roster. People are just basically trying to connect dots here. Like he's still on the roster, so they must not believe in Trey Lance, or is when there's smoke, there's fire type of thing. So, what's your thought process? Why is there so many this doubting narrative about Trey Lance?
It's either doubting or praising season. And hey, you got to sell clicks, you got to get paid, you got to do those things. So you got to write things that
But this has been going
grab
on for a little
attention.
bit, though. This has
Yeah.
been going on for a little bit.
Listen, I think it's the uncertainty. It's the unknown, right? That you could point in either direction, like somebody could sit here and tell you that he has the capability of being easily the best quarterback in that draft class. They'd be right. They could tell you that he could be the worst quarterback in that draft class. They could potentially be right as well, right? Like there's a lot of uncertainty based on the competition that he played against in college, how far he's removed from playing, like lack of playing time. All those other quarterbacks that you mentioned, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, I'll do you two better in Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. They all saw a lot of time last year. They all saw a lot of time. Trey didn't. So it's still the unknown is what scares people, right? The change is what scares people. But this is actually what excites me. Let me tell you, I'm going to be as real with you as possible. Week in and week out, we talked about the 49ers and Jimmy G and whatever, right? Like we always covered the games, we always recap the games, and more often than not, we were talking about bonehead play here that might have cost the game. When he manages the game, he manages it really well. We do really well, but that's coming off a run game. But is he out there like winning games? No, he's out there managing us to a win, right? Like he's not Rodgers, he's not Mahomes, he's not those things. So I don't have to see much to feel pretty darn confident that at the very least Trey could be that. At the very least, like I don't have to see.
So you're comfortable with him managing a game with the 3 first-round draft picks that you gave up for?
No. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not saying that. And my excitement level expects more than that. What I'm saying is
the bar's been set so low.
Not so low, but if the floor is Jimmy stats, I mean, dude, we played in the NFC Championship last season, and 2 years before that, we played in the Super Bowl, right? So, like, the roster is equipped to support it. He doesn't have to be in his first full years as a starter. He doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't have to equate to what Justin Herbert is. If he does, sky's the limit. You know what I mean? The sky's the limit. I'm just saying, like, I don't need to see a 17-game sample to feel confident that at the very least he can do what's been done for us over the last few years. And that's been done by like a coach scheming and doing those sort of things. If you give somebody that has a bigger arm, more mobility, a lot of other things, like younger, might be more willing to take a risk and try to fit something in. Like, I mean, Brett Favre made a career out of it, right? Like making throws that most people wouldn't even attempt, but he was like, F it, I'm going to sling it. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Dude threw the most touchdowns, also threw the most interceptions at one point in his career, right? But he's a Hall of Famer. It's when you're not this like crazy veteran and you're like, you feel like you got things to prove, you'll take some chances. I mean, Justin Herbert's a gunslinger too, right? And that's like he's not going to attempt some of these throws when he's 31, 32, 33 and talking about his legacy and things of that nature. It's just different. I don't to answer your question, I just think he's too easy of a target because of the unknowns, where it's, hey, pick your poison and what narrative you want to talk about, right? Like
it's just weird because I feel like Justin Fields doesn't get this criticism. And remember, Justin Fields said the NFL's easy, like after after a couple preseason games. Zach Wilson doesn't get this criticism. Trevor Lawrence doesn't get this. Like, where is this?
It's just, I'll tell you where it comes from. Bears are ass, Jets are ass, Jaguars are ass, no expectations. When you suit up for the San Francisco 49ers,
that's a lot of ass.
Championships are the expectation. Like, regardless of, I mean, dude, we had some really piss poor seasons, right? But the problem with the fan base being as large as it is and the media coverage being as it is, a lot of it is just uneducated, in my opinion, and there's just certain expectations that some teams carry that other teams don't. It's just the way it goes.
I got a little Sophie's choice right here. I just thought of this question right now off the top of the head. Right? What would you consider a, a bigger success? Trey Lance balls out. You guys miss the playoffs by a game or two, or Trey Lance is mediocre and you guys make the playoffs, and you go like and you go like kind of like you had the run you just did. Oh, that's a good one, right?
That's a real good one, actually.
Because yeah,
the fan in me wants to say the latter has a mediocre year and we go on an NFC championship run, because that just means I get to watch more football of my team, right? Like, and that at the end of the day, as a fan, that's what I'm here for. I just want to watch as many games as possible of my team in a season, and I want the season to last as long as it possibly can. Internally, it bodes much better if he has tremendous success and balls out, and it feels like it's sustainable and not a one-hit wonder, because we have seen what really good quarterback play can do for teams, right? Like, it can, like, I would argue that the Packers for years have been a mediocre football team outside of having arguably the best quarterback in the league under center that has made them competitive. Like, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers right now, that entire NFC North is up for grabs. Up for grabs. But the fact that he is, it's the Packers division to lose, right? Like, so if we're talking about like that type of not Aaron Rodgers, like comparing to Aaron Rodgers, but we're talking about that level of performance, that means much more for next year, the following year, the year after, because you build your team differently, right?
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I think I would rather not make the playoffs, knowing the fact that like, hey, we got it's an answer. It's edged in stone. We got our future quarterback, right? And what that does, it makes you rest assured, and also it becomes a little more attractive for free agents. Free agents, yeah, think about in the future. When you guys do eventually, if you guys don't decide to re-sign Jimmy G after this year, for free agency, people will come, to your team if your quarterback is good. Look what happens with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. No one wanted to come to Buffalo during that hiatus when they couldn't find a quarterback. Now Buffalo's a great destination. Von Miller, and a bunch of other guys. So
totally agree.
Yeah,
I just think our age,
I just think going to the playoffs would be so short sighted and like a
totally
type
agree.
of success.
Totally agree. When you have the quarterback position answered, playoffs are attainable.
That's 15 years.
Year.
That's 15 years. You don't have to worry about shit.
Exactly. But at our age, Lou, in full transparency, I'm not 24 anymore, where I think I'm going to live forever. And I'm just
I have 15 years left? That's a good over under.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how many more of these seasons I get. So while I get them, I'm just focused on 2022, right? Like, I'm not even worried about 2023. I mean, the way some of these games go, I'm surprised I don't have 4 heart attacks in the middle of the game. All right.
Relax, man. As a Chargers fan,
I get it.
I'm like Chris Farley in that Bears skit. Every night, got a piece of brat stuck in my throat. Okay.
The Bears. The Bears. All right. So let's talk about the other lingering issue here. That I told you.
I will let you go. This is ad nauseum. This is.
I know, but I told you this was going to happen too. I actually asked you to like share my tweet out just to get more visibility on it, because I wanted to be out there before all of the pundits were out there as somebody who watches their team and gets no fanfare. But I like to think I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. It's the Debo scenario. So again, called this, but when I called it, it was far less about this media notion of Debo wanting to leave and much more about it's going to be a ridiculous wide receiver market this year. People are going to get paid, and the 49ers were faced with a decision. They know it's the time to sign, and his value was at an all-time high based off of that. I mean, dude, the season he had is like once in a lifetime, right? Like if if any 49er fan expects him to replicate what he did last season again, you're naive. Like, that's really difficult. Same with Cooper Kupp. What he did last season, like, you think you're going to get that every year? That's naive. Those are once in a lifetime type seasons for these types of players. So, 49ers, what's the old thing? Like, buy low, sell high, right? Like, you turn a second round draft pick into multiple first round picks. That's a win all day. That's a win all day, especially if you feel like you can replicate that. So that's why I said, don't be surprised if you hear trade speculation around Deebo Samuel. Were those word for word, were those not my words?
It's up on our Instagram page at WTF Pod NFL. Go check us out.
There you go.
Shameless plug there, right?
There we go. Like, you're being responsible by testing the water and see what's out there, right? Like, it's an opportunity to get cheaper, maybe get multiple players that might not ever replace that production, but fill gaps in other areas. So you don't need that exact production, just so many different things. But then the narrative became Deebo doesn't want to be here. And you saw all the shit about like stripping his stuff from Instagram. You saw all the stuff, or you heard all the stuff about like questioning how he's being leveraged and utilized and blah, 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 blah. The why I'm saying blah, 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 blah is this man coined the term wide back during the season based on his usage. He started it himself, right? Nobody else gave him that moniker. He came out and said it. I assure you, when the ball was in his hands and he was producing, he was plenty fine with it. But come contract time now, right, where it's time to get paid, you think about it. You think about what running backs get paid. You think about longevity of running backs, and you think like, maybe I should just play wide receiver. Maybe I get 10 years out of this league versus 3.5 or 4 years out of this league. And that's his agent in his ear as well, and him becoming more mature and a professional and seeing what's going on around him. I was never really, I shouldn't say that. On the day of the first round of the draft, I was a little nervous. I was a little nervous that this actually might happen. But I never really faltered from I'm not that worried about this, because it just felt like negotiation tactics. This is what these guys do. They all negotiate now through the media, through social media. They all do stuff. It's not the first time we've seen somebody strip down their social media and blah, 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 blah.
I don't think so. The Derwin James contract situation, that's been pretty amicable. I just hate the fact when, listen, I get your Kyler Murray and your Deebo Samuel. I just hate when they strip 100%. Down that Instagram shit. And I just feel like that's such like a high school girl back in the day. For those who used to be on AOL Instant Messenger, you put that ominous,
away message.
About like, if you want to love someone, start loving yourself. That's what I fucking hate.
I've probably seen 10 of those in my life.
I fucking hate when players do that.
Me too.
You fight on the phone. Don't do it. Like, it's stupid.
You don't have to agree with the tactic, but it's a tactic nonetheless. And why it's, you and I grew up in a different area, dude. Like, literally, you just mentioned AOL Instant Messenger. That was our version of social media when we were growing up, right? And even before that, when we were NFL fans, there was no such thing as social media. So I'm sure some of this shit was going behind the scenes and being disgruntled, but nobody knew about it because there wasn't access to it. There wasn't way to expose it. And I assure you, back in the late 80s and early 90s, if there was social media, you'd see more of this, right? It's just agents in their ear, like, I know how you get paid. I know how you get disgruntled. I know how you do all these things. But all of this, do I firmly believe that Deebo wants to be used more as a wide receiver than a running back and that wide back? Yeah, I believe that. Do I believe he was unhappy a little bit with his usage? Yeah, but I also know he's competitive and he wants to win. Do I believe he wants to get paid a lot of money? Yeah, as he should, right? So all those things factor in, but I don't believe for one single second that he actually wanted out. Dude, players like playing for Kyle Shanahan. Like, and that's all that it comes down to. I don't think he wanted out for a single second. And I'll tell you why in a second, but I'll let you go.
Mine, it's interesting. Yes, I do think, offensive players do love playing for Kyle Shanahan. Do you think if Deebo was to go to a different team, he would be as successful as he is with the Niners?
No.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either.
Listen, the stuff that he doesn't want to do is the stuff that just gave him his all pro once in a lifetime year. And I get why he doesn't want to do it. I think if he went and played with like Aaron Rodgers or somebody like that, like there's going to be a
But
lot of production. But I
but
think
the two
Kyle
teams have
Shanahan knows
the two teams that are flirting with him, the Jets,
no,
the
no,
Lions. Yeah.
no. Like, no. Like, you go there to get paid. And you know what? You go there and get paid, you get one contract. You stay with this team and get paid and strive towards that production you just had, you get 2, maybe even 3 big contracts out of that. So like again, I don't believe for a single second that dude, the narrative got so crazy like, oh, he's from South Carolina, he wants to come back home and play with the Carolina Panthers and the property taxes and blah 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 in California and the income tax and blah blah blah. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, this dude's gonna make game-changing lifetime money. Like, you think he's worried about like an extra mil here or there? Like, that's literally the type of money he's gonna make. It's not the end of the world when it comes to that stuff. And you only get one shot to do this, and you got to go to the team. Like, and then the other thing about like doesn't want to be here. Okay, whatever. The same agent that represents Deebo Samuel also represents AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, and DK Metcalf. AJ Brown got traded. Terry McLaurin's holding out and not showing up to voluntary camp.
He's about to get that saying signed, which would be awful for you guys if he does before Deebo.
DK is holding out, right? And listen, they'll all be re-signed. And like, yeah, sometimes you want to be first to the punch, but there's some other deals that have happened along the way that are starting to set markets. Like Deebo wants to be paid like a wide receiver. The best wide receiver in football last year, Cooper Kupp, he didn't break the bank. Like he made money but like he ain't resetting the market. So there's a precedent. So this thing, but where I was going with that point is 1 traded, 2 holding out from camp to make their point. Deebo is at camp. In fact, he was running aggressively on the sideline. I don't think he should step on the field until he has a contract. Let's not be foolish, right? He pops a fucking Achilles, then he's making his injury guarantee for the year, and then he's got to go sweat it out through the final year of his contract because ain't nobody giving him money coming off of that. Like, so that's a responsible decision. Throwing the ball with Kyle Shanahan's kid on the sideline. He's got the playbook in his hands, right? Like, somebody who wants out of there in this league filled with divas and me personalities, they don't do that, bro. They're at home. They're training. I don't want to say they're at home. These all guys, they work out, they take care of themselves, they do that. He's just doing it away from camp.
No, so this is the boomer in you, man. What you're not understanding, there's no more holdouts because they cost you money. Now they're called hold-ins. And you show up, but you really don't practice.
All right. You just said there's no holdouts. I'm just telling you, Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf are not there, and it's costing them money, represented by the same agent. So Deebo's smart, right? Like, I don't want to cost myself money because if this contract doesn't get done, I'm only making like $2.5 million or whatever it is this year. I can't have 800,000 of it pulled away from me because I didn't go to camp. Like, so there's a prudent, responsible here, but at the end of the day, he knows he's going to get signed. So, and most of these teams, they waive that shit because you re-sign the contract, right? Like, it's all a threat. It's all those things. So I think it gets ironed out. It'll be fine. He'll be a 49er for a while. Every from Kyle to what Kyle said about this in the media the other day. He's like, I don't worry about what you guys write and print and do all that. When I think of my relationships with people, I think about the conversations we have, how that person feels about me and how I feel about them, and trust that I love Deebo Samuel, right? Like, it's going to get done. Now, the issue that I have here, and this is the same issue that I with the 49ers, is Parag Math, our CFO, essentially, like our finance guy. He's a stingy negotiator, and we do tend to rub some of our own players the wrong way with initial, like George Kittle. Like, he's the highest paid tight end in football, but the initial contract, dude, they called it Bloody Sunday, right? Like, because it was bad, the initial contract. It was almost like offensive, and I hate that we do that. But we pay our players. Trent Williams, highest paid left tackle in the NFL. Fred Warner, highest paid linebacker in the NFL. George Kittle, highest paid tight end in the NFL. Kyle Juszczyk, highest paid. I mean, shit, he's probably making more than half the running backs in the league, the highest paid fullback in the NFL. Jimmy Garoppolo making $25 million. He'll be the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL. Nick Bosa is going to break the fucking bank and be the highest paid defensive end in the NFL. Like, we pay the players. But I think this situation is actually benefiting the 49ers by it playing out the way it did, to the tune of a couple $1 million a year on what Debo will agree to, versus the initial sentiment of like, got to give him $30 million a year like Tyreek Hill got. Got to give him 26 or 27 million a year like Devontae got, because it was next guy. Now that a couple other people, dependent upon like what this McLaurin or even DK contract looks like, if they're less than those, then the precedent is set. The AJ Brown was actually in our favor, right? What was that? 22 million a year, something like that.
That was closer to 25, if I'm not mistaken.
Either way, it's not 30 million, right? Like in that couple $1 million, that helps. So, but to me, the Debo thing was the bigger thing, right? Like, was the bigger distraction, because this guy who just had this unbelievable season all of a sudden wants to be gone. Like, what's really going on behind the scenes? And I think what was going behind the scenes is just a lot of smoke and mirrors. And he'll be a 49er.
All right. Well, from that serious conversation, I got one last question, then I'll ask you for a record prediction. And this one, you want to talk about throwing curveballs. This is a knuckle curveball. So you better sit up, tight, focus in here. Weston, I want your top 5 hated villains in the NFC. It could all reside in the West if you want, but name me 5 players or coaches as a 49ers fan that you hate going into this season.
So not teams, players or coaches.
It could be players or coaches, not teams. Teams would be too easy, bro.
I know. Way too easy. I was like, come on, guys.
And you don't have to rank them. It doesn't have to be in any particular order. I'm not asking you. I'm putting you on the spot here.
Number 1, Aaron
G.
Rodgers. yeah. Jimmy G. Number 1 is Aaron Rodgers. I'm confident in that number 1. I can't stand the individual. I respect the hell out of him, dude. And he's so good and he's so talented. But you said villain, hate him.
Yeah.
Actually, let me take a step back, because he actually hasn't taken a snap for the team just yet. So he's a former NFC player for a lifetime. Number 1 is Russell Wilson. A, he was a 49er killer. B, he's the corniest motherfucker walking the face of the earth in professional sports. Number 2 would be Aaron Rodgers. Number 3, unequivocally, Aaron Donald. Now I'm trying to stay in the NFC and think off the top of my head. Villains.
You got Dallas, you got Philly.
None of them worry me. You know what I mean? Like, I love playing Dallas. You know what I mean? Like, they don't give me pause for concern.
You got Sean McVay. I'm not trying to help you out here.
Actually, yeah. Sean McVay for sure. And I would throw Pete Carroll. No, because I actually really do like Pete Carroll. Like, I do a lot.
There's another one I'm shocked you're not saying, but I'll let you proceed.
So I love Pete Carroll because the last time we won a Super Bowl, he was our defensive coordinator. So how can I be mad at a man like that? And how you can be mad at the oldest coach in the NFL running around like he's the youngest coach in the NFL up and down the sideline? Like, I'm I hope I'm as active as he is at his age. I don't know, man. Like, I love football. I don't hate many. You said it has to be the NFC, right?
Yeah, NFC.
So I can't say Tua?
No.
God.
I hate to give you this answer.
Bobby Wagner?
Okay, I'll take that. I thought you'd go Jalen Ramsey.
No, I don't hate Jalen Ramsey. I don't. He doesn't. You know what's funny about this? And don't take, like, he's a phenomenal player. We both had him ranked as our number 1 defensive back going into last season. Like, he's a stud. I loved him when he was in Jacksonville and I didn't have to deal with him. Like, it makes it a little bit more painful. But, dude, he doesn't, like, shut down the 49ers. Like, the Rams in general, like, we've had their number for the last few years, right? And he takes away a side of the field and he can follow a number 1, et cetera. But this team has been built on, like, even Debo Samuel, the year he had, he's not like a number 1 wide receiver, right? Like, he's like a gimmick player, essentially, that you get open and do those sort of things. So, like, that limits the effect that Jalen has against against us. So,
okay, so
Aaron Donald,
so let's spit it again. So your top 5 hated villains in the
Russell
NFC.
Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Sean McVay, Bobby Wagner, and what was the other one that Aaron Donald.
Okay, there it is. There it is. All right, real quick, record prediction, and would it your record prediction, and would that you constitute that as a success? I'm not asking you to look for the schedule or anything like that. What's your knee jerk? Because we'll go through that like as the off season goes on. Knee
10-7.
Is that a success?
Well, it depends on the question you asked me before. Does that get you into the playoffs, or does that mean that Trey ball down? You got 10 wins
in the NFC. It gets you into the playoffs.
Yeah. So yeah, you always have to look at it, like you just got to get in.
Yep.
Just got to get in, and then whatever happens, you know.
Well, those are my.
What about you for the Chargers? I didn't ask you a record prediction. I'd like to end with that.
10-7. I went through their schedule before I got
success or not success.
All depends if that's. I'm gonna. It was an imitation is the best form of flattery. That type of.
Yep.
So if it gets to the playoffs, yeah, and I just think I don't know if it gets them to the playoffs because that AFC is insane, man.
So I think it's different for you versus the question that you asked for me. Like, you have the answer at quarterback. So now it's about maximizing the rookie contract.
I personally think if I'm answering that question, the only way, and you might be thinking this is a little too crazy for me, the only way I think the season is a success for the Los Angeles Chargers is if they make a deep run to the playoffs, and not just a one and done. If they get at least to get to the second round of the playoffs and play good in the second, you have to, but bare minimum second round of the playoffs for Los Angeles Chargers for it to be deemed to consider a success.
You got to get one playoff win so you can stop this shit about Justin Herbert that he doesn't get him to the playoffs and he doesn't win playoff games. Like, you just got to like almost get that monkey off the back and move. But I think you have a lot to be excited about. So either way, Lou, that wraps us up. I think we did a pretty good job considering this was an hour and 45 minutes just knocking the dust off with like very limited.
And the thing is, with a lot of listeners might not. I was going to say this was all free form. This was just shooting from the hip and just trying to get back into the swing of things.
I think we did just that, especially halfway through till the end. I think we got real comfortable real fast, and we'll be back in short order. We got a couple things that we're working on and, to kind of fill the gaps before we get into like mandatory camps and all of those things, OTAs and all that stuff that's going to be coming up. So, Lou, a pleasure getting back on the horn with you, man. Look forward to doing it again real soon.
All right.
Oh,
dude. Wow.
Jesus. Wow. Lou, please correct my mistake.
Fucking amateur hour out here. All right. So what Weston meant to say, Lou, tell the great listeners where you can follow us at WTF Pod NFL on Instagram and Twitter. And then I would say, hey, Weston, tell where they can find our YouTube page and subscribe.
We're talking football. It's that simple, that easy on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the likes. You'll be notified when the new content comes up. Since we haven't been on the air in a while, I'll remind everybody that I told Lou if we got to 500 followers by the end of 2022, I would take him out to a very expensive dinner. I'm actually extending that another year. I think the original goal is by the end of 2021. I'm going to give it another year.
I'm going to say I'll be lucky if I get my ass to Red Lobster with you.
Hey,
great cheddar biscuits. Great cheddar biscuits.
Bro, the all-you-can-eat seafood platter. Wash that down, baby.
I'm
good
a big
to go.
Seafood guy.
Well, then I'm sorry to hear that. You could sit in the parking lot, and I'll bring you out my scraps. All right, that wraps us up, my man. Always a pleasure. Looking forward to doing it again real soon.
Take it easy.